Hi, everyone.
And we are live.
Excellent. Hello, everyone. We are so happy to have Dr. Mary Murphy here to discuss how to help your child develop organizational skills for distance learning and for life. Today, her focus is going to be on children in elementary school. Dr. Murphy is currently working with kids of all ages during school closure through the tele-therapy platform, and she'll be able to provide us with some tips and strategies we can use at home. She is a licensed clinical psychologist and specializes in counseling, executive function and academic coaching, psychological testing, psychotherapy, and biofeedback. She completed an advanced fellowship at the Yale School of Medicine and is a professor at Westcon. Your moderators here today are Eve Kessler, founder of SpedNet Wilton, Carolina Corrigan, and myself, Janine Kelly. Just a couple of quick ground rules. Please feel free to ask questions at the end of Dr. Murphy's presentation through the Q&A button down at the bottom of your screen. Don't use the chat, use the Q&A. You'll see it down at the very bottom. And also be mindful that this is an open forum and it's also being recorded and will be posted to SpedNet's Facebook page later on today. So just be mindful when you're asking questions that you don't reveal any confidential information. And then lastly, any information provided in this webinar by Dr. Murphy or the moderators is not intended to be legal or therapeutic advice. The information, content, and materials are for general informational purposes only. So with that being said, welcome, Dr. Murphy.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. I just wanted to make sure I could grab my screen share here. Oops. And I'm sitting here like somewhat cringing, wondering if you can hear my child yelling in the background. I'm hoping everything is good. All right. Tell me if you can see my screen okay. How's that?
Yep, beautiful.
Yep. All right, that's great. So, thank you guys. I have always loved doing presentations for SpedNet, and it's always been such a pleasure to, and actually this is just awkward for me because I'm used to being able to connect so directly with the audience and kind of bounce things off people as I talk. So it's just a little awkward for me, but I was just saying to the organizers about how this is definitely what I'm getting a little bit of a sense of what it's like for the kids, because this is a weird platform to be doing anything, right? To just transfer over to this kind of robotic life where we have like a android in front of us rather than a human that we're interacting with. So it must be really quite, uncomfortable at times for our students, our kids, to be jumping online, and that's now how they have their classroom. That's how they have their socialization. That's how they have everything. It's just, I'm getting a little snippet of what they must feel like. So I'm really happy to talk with you. When we were all talking, Alina and Janine and Eve and I, we've been talking and brainstorming about what could be helpful to our group. And really, I've always talked to the group about my specialty area of executive functioning. And so that's really where we're starting. We're going to talk about how we can kind of adapt and use executive functioning skills to optimize distance learning and deal with the obstacles that are coming up for our kids. And as I mentioned, I'm a psychologist, and I spend a lot of my time, really the majority of my practice, with executive function coaching. So I have been, and what I'm going to share with you today are snippets and tips and strategies that I've been picking up from working with my clients that are all now on tele-therapy platform. And so I've been doing video sessions for 6 or 7 weeks now. And I've been really taking a deep dive into what it's like for the kids to be learning from home, because I'm diving into their Google Classroom and sharing screens with them, and also having parent sessions join to see, a 360 look at what's happening in their households as they're trying to learn. So I'm going to share some of these strategies with you guys to hopefully help you with some of the same obstacles I know we're all dealing with. So today what I was going to cover is the organizational challenges that we're now having our kids experience because of being home. and really within the context of executive functioning, which I'll describe in a minute. I'm going to talk about how distance learning poses all these unique challenges but basically what can we as parents do to help in 3 different areas. One, just how can we adjust our view of what's happening, change our expectations a little bit. And then how can we change the environment that they're in, kind of optimize their environment to enhance their learning. And environment, I'm going to talk about internal environment, kind of their emotional health, and also the external environment, how we can optimize that for optimal learning. And then what do we know about approaches to learning? What does science tell us about how kids learn? How kids develop these executive functioning skills and how to organize themselves. We have a roadmap for this, and it's just not usually translated from research into practice where parents are getting this information so much. So I just want to share with you some of the tips that we do know that So just as a broad definition, I wanted just to start with explaining that the big picture is that we are working with our kids where their brain is under development still, right? That's why we have this brain with scaffolding. Our executive functions are the skills that we use to manage ourselves to achieve a goal. So like everything we needed to do to get ourselves ready and here today for the webinar, for example, that used all of our executive functioning skills. And these are all neurologically based skills. So what happens is that when kids, by definition, they should have weaknesses in these areas because they're still developing. These are weaknesses that are key to learning. And so if we want, the best thing we can do to help our kids learn while they're home is to actually bolster and support their executive functioning skills. And so when they do struggle with it, they end up having trouble with their memory, with being able to have flexible thinking and control themselves. So we really need them to have optimal executive functioning. And we have to remember these are life skills. So this is a really optimistic, positive message. I want to tell you that these are amazing skills that we are getting this very unique opportunity actually to sit there and kind of help support while they're home and we're getting to see this unravel. We can help support those life skills and just know that it's developmentally appropriate. They should be having trouble with these skills. And there's some very practical things that we can do to help that. So I'm going to tell you globally, just for your reference, that there's several different areas of executive functioning, and we're going to focus on the second one, which is organization today. The first one is planning, which is how do you do your assignments, when to do it, like planning out a schedule essentially. Organization, we chose to focus on because it really taps into so many different executive functioning areas. To organize and keep yourself on track, it really does incorporate all these other areas, which is time management, how to know how much time to spend on something and plan for it, how to start doing work, which is huge for kids, right? How do you get them started? And then how do you keep them sticking with it, which is tapping into their motivation. How do you help them just go with the flow when things start to fall apart? Just before coming in here, I basically fell apart. I'm trying to manage this multiple platforms that my daughter has to go in and out of, and I completely lost the link. It looked different when I logged back in. I'm just like, okay, I need to go with the flow here. I will find it eventually, but I have my time pressure, needing to leave and go do something else to come here, and I'm thinking, okay, let's think about modeling, going with the flow here. So I'm literally was saying out loud, okay, let's just, we'll go back to our email, get the original link and start fresh. Just there's a lot of skills like that that we have accomplished over the years that we can model for them. These are all opportunities, even when they're frustrating. The other two last areas of executive functioning is memory. They have to remember and get into their memory what they're learning. And then they have to be able to monitor themselves. They have to tame that impulsivity that they have naturally because they're kids, even maybe more because they have some conditions like maybe ADHD or even anxiety. Sometimes people will act more impulsively because of different conditions they have. They have to learn how to exercise emotional control. These are all areas that I just want to point out should be under development. We're going to focus on how to organize and keep them on track, but just know, I can't emphasize this enough, they should be having trouble with this. And I don't want to forget that, our audience, we are a group of parents who are supporting kids that have special needs. When you have a condition like ADHD or anxiety, even a medically complex child, all of them may have more difficulty and not be exactly where the maturity of maybe, say, a 9-year-old might be, and you could expect their executive functioning to be here. They might be a little bit different because of their conditions. So it's widely known that someone's executive functioning age does not actually equal their chronological age. So you may have, it's a wide range, but you may have a child that's actually, 9 years old on paper, but functioning as young as 6 years old in these 7 areas. So when there are special needs to consider, this is why we have some extra difficulties when we're dealing with this. So why else would we be having these difficulties? Is because they should be struggling more at this particular time. If you can tell, these are the coronavirus molecules right there. Well, the reason they should be having more difficulty is because it's a new reality and it has all new challenges with it. We're facing this unprecedented and prolonged period of time where they have to learn exclusively at home and from us. We now are our child's primary source of organizational and the executive functioning support now. So they are having to, have us kind of steer the ship. And that's also a completely new dynamic for them to get used to. And we can't forget that they are smart. It doesn't matter, we're talking about elementary school age kids. We're talking about, 5 to 12 years old here. It doesn't matter how old they are. They are absolutely aware that we are in strange times. They are picking up on anxiety. They are picking up on the fact that there's unusual, I'm just checking the chat to see if everything's okay. Oh, okay, sorry. They are picking up on the fact that there's anxiety lurking behind every corner right now. And as a psychologist, we sometimes diagnose people when they are going through a lot of changes at once in their life as an adjustment disorder. I would argue the entire country has an adjustment disorder right now. So when you're hijacked by emotion, it takes over the learning brain. The learning brain is the one that's ready and attentive and able to learn. But emotions that get in the way do get in the way of learning. And we also are dealing with this different reality. And I was joking last night when we were doing our prep for the call. We used to say, like, don't use screens, don't be on the computer so much. Why are you looking at your tablet? And now it's, well, everybody has to be on screens. Everybody has to be doing their work this way 24/7. Like, they're not just using it for social needs, they're using it for all their education now. Our messages have even changed, and our embracing of technology has completely changed. And then they also have to deal with, like, seeing themselves on the screen. I'm having kids that are having difficulty with being okay with joining into Zoom sessions, even though their teachers, set them up. Sometimes they're putting them as optional for this reason, because it's hard to assume everybody will be able to and want to get on the screen. There are some kids that are just really needing to be kind of like transitioned and transitioned into the process of being able to interact on the screen. Kids with certain diagnoses, especially, I'm noticing, are having a lot of difficulty with this. I have some people who are on the spectrum, and they have had more anxiety than pretty much all the rest, in trying to transition them to a computer platform. Just the amount of change is so difficult to overcome. And so what we've done is for example, recommended that the teacher have a phone call with them first, transition kind of weaning into the process. So having a phone call first, perhaps, and instead, maybe the next week they're able to have the computer open, but not be in the screen of being visible the whole time, knowing that they can come out of the screen, having a short session. All these things, we're helping them try to transition to a different reality that we need them to. They're also dealing with things like totally different grading expectations. My district, for example, this week went to pass fail. And so now, how do we motivate our kids to do just a little bit better than failing? It's an unfortunate reality that everything is very different. Our other, difficulty is we have supervision needs. I know I'm working full time. I have a 7-year-old at home that needs to be at a desk and, trying to get work done, and can't always be supervised because there's going to be, during my sessions, I get these little notes under my door, can I have an ice pop? Things like that. We're trying to manage our lives, our households, our jobs, and our children all at the same time. And so now supervision of children might not all be 24 hours, eyes on the kids. And then our other special reality is that we don't have special services the way we had them available before. We don't have OT specialists. We don't have our speech and language or our psychologists from school right there, or teachers even right there to tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, stay on task, or hey, you're having some sensory challenges today. Let's try to do this. We are wraparound services for our child all the time. And then when we thought about why we wanted to do this in general, the real reason we wanted to do it is because we have some kids that, they might have even been doing fine at school. They could handle writing their homework down in a planner, keeping a clean book bag, but that's not even what we need anymore. Those are not those skills that we need. Now we need kids that are able to organize themselves, to sit at a desk, interact with a computer, go in and out of 6 to 8 different computer platforms, and how to submit work in all different places and websites all day long. Those are completely different sets of skills. And the other thing is that we as parents are under stresses like never before. Did you see this new New York Times article that came out this week? It's, finally kind of acknowledging that it's too much, remote learning is really breaking down parents. And so what we want to do is focus here on what can parents do. So these are the 3 things I want you to think about. If we can focus on structure, predictability, and routine for the kids, then we're providing the structure and the organization that they need. When we adjust our expectations, it can mean so much. It could go so far. The first thing is absolutely consider structure and routine as the key to everything. I say that every morning has to be exactly the same because honestly, I know we need to be flexible, so I don't mean that, but I mean having something that's predictable every day. For example, every day, our school system sends out a morning announcements email with a video. They get the Pledge of Allegiance. They get their birthdays announced. They hear the announcements overhead. What they used to hear overhead in the school is now in a video. My daughter is so soothed by this. The fact that she has the same familiar voices, something the same to always count on, that's always going to be there every morning, that we always start the day with. And that could be anything on your side. Doesn't have to necessarily be something like that. But I say we have to treat it like it's now our job to take it seriously, to get up and brush our teeth, dress for the day. We are not going to be in pajamas doing distance learning. That's just how we have to kind of, set expectations for them. So before any starting of work, that's what we do. The kids that I'm working with, they say, honestly, keeping the same schedule all the time is absolutely key to them. And we joke that it's not a coronacation. We have had some kids, and I've seen lots of memes online and stuff about how this is, a coronacation. No, we're not on vacation from school. This is serious stuff. these are counting as learning days. We also want to use movement breaks liberally, like let them move around, not be locked in the way they're kind of like soldiers sitting at a desk in a classroom, but they need to get up and move around a lot. And most kids that I work with are saying that if they can get most of their work done, like the heavy work, more in the morning and have less to do in the afternoon, they do much, much better. The sustained attention ability of a kid, forget a kid that might also have special needs, but any kid, they will have less fuel and attention and ability to sustain if you keep going with some heavy hitting subjects into the late afternoon. It's just not possible. We don't want to forget about just, basics. We want to keep them fueled and energized with snacks and food. And then we want to think about the environment. The first thing is location of work. So kids are doing well when they have their own setup. They feel like little adults. They get to do what they see their parents are doing, which is typically sitting with a laptop and doing some work or being on a work call. They like to mimic that part. So when you have a nice workstation, I'll show you an example of just a clean workstation. The location of it really matters to be, most kids have to be within sight line of you so that there's the subtle message that they're being watched so that they kind of pay better attention. But I would argue that it's really helpful for most kids. Unless they get really dysregulated when you move them around, I would, on most occasions, try to move them around to different workstations when, just like at school, they had to go off to art class and to recess and gym, and they got to move out of their classroom. So if we keep them at a desk all day and they don't get to go somewhere else, it's not helpful for them and their mental status. And that's what I mean also, their internal environment is what we have to stay keyed into. We know if our kids are anxious or their energy is waning, we have to kind of keep looking for signs of distress, essentially. Are they having difficulty sticking with it? So if their internal environment, like they're starting to get frustrated, kids who are frustrated, I see it live during my tele-sessions. When they're frustrated, they start just pressing keys, they press on the keyboard a lot. When something's not working easily, they get frustrated like that. You start to see signs like that, or you see them biting their nails, you see them putting their head down, the drama, right? I get this a lot from my own daughter, so that's why I say the drama. They're putting their heads down. Those kinds of things, when we see those signs, we need to take a break and we need to probably let them rest or run around. And our other expectation that we have to change is that we now are, forget about the way we thought about the screens before. They're no longer the enemy. They're actually being used for social connection. And so a lot of our recommendations have been to share screens together, play a game together, watch a movie together, use media together. And we're going to talk about how to keep it fun related to that as well. Keeping it fun is using apps and websites that can be alternatives to the materials that the teachers send. One of my favorite apps is PhotoMath because I'm terrible with math. And you can, with the app, take a picture of an equation and then a video shows up that shows you how to solve each step of it. Fascinating to me because I know nothing about this stuff. So I find it so helpful and just a tool that's there that's not the same as a worksheet that's in front of me that I don't know how to do. I have a PhD. I've been laughing all week about, I have a PhD, but I cannot do second grade math. It's ridiculous. It's completely different. So using these other kinds of tools can really, really help. And then we want to keep it fun by using Google Meets and Zoom sessions with family and friends. We want to enlist anybody that you can think of that might be a special treat for them or could help them. So my daughter, for example, has an older cousin who's really good at math. I got such a nice break by having her have a Zoom session, do my daughter's math worksheet with her for like an hour. They were on the Zoom together, having so much fun. And it was a social visit plus helped her get all that math done. You know, so enlisting people into, you know, incorporating them into the day can really give some break up of the academics and still get the work done. And then they're just, you know, we can't forget that people need to work for rewards. People work for paychecks, even as adults, right? We all work for rewards. We're keyed into positive reinforcement. That's how we operate. So I think we should all try to do that. Always use like, okay, we're going to get through the day and then we're going to have our break, and or we're going to get through the rest of the day and we're going to watch a movie together, you know, that kind of thing. And this is just a little joke. This is my daughter. So distance learners sometimes wear capes, like literally. Being stuck up against the wall, having a hard time trying to figure things out, change things up. Bring your kid outside. Do something that's different. It's funny, I did this week where I let her wear her Halloween costume, and it happens to be the 6-month mark before Halloween starts. So I had a friend this week also have all of her kids dress up in Halloween costumes and say it's the half, kind of like a half birthday, you know, like it's halfway to Halloween. And so they just made it a Halloween day. It needs to be kept energetic and fun. That's I think part of what helps to optimize learning. So changing our environment, absolutely number one, biggest recommendation is actually have a schedule. This is just a one that was on the internet. But I think that we have to use a schedule, teach them the executive functioning that we have learned, which is the satisfaction of having a schedule and being able to put that check mark next to each thing as you do it. We learned that at some point, right? And we still operate that way. It works. So teaching them some of those skills that we know is a life skill is really key right now. If they have something to keep them on task, like, okay, I'm getting through it, I'm getting done, it really does help them. So definitely post the schedule either that you get from school or one that you make up yourself, and keep it prominently like on the desk where they are working during the day. Can't emphasize that enough, that it needs to be, we use schedules. And then these organizational tools for the environment. This might seem like, you know, back to basics, but it truthfully is. Like we can't forget, we got to use checklists and schedules. It truly, truly helps. Most kids with executive functioning difficulties, which all kids in childhood really have these difficulties, they have trouble with guessing how much time something will take, figuring out, you know, how long they've been even doing something. They're really not good at time management. So they need to have clocks prominently displayed in their environment to kind of teach them about the passage of time, seeing that, okay, 5 minutes of doing math really wasn't 30 minutes that they felt it was. You know, them getting an idea of how to gauge time and notice that time is passing is very key to maturity, honestly, and to developing as a learner. If they are seeing that, okay, it's now another hour has passed and I didn't, you know, I have to move on to my next set of work, it really does help to keep somebody on task. So clocks really should be everywhere. And then don't forget these basics. Like, we learned it along the way. We need color, we need energy, we need something that's going to keep us, you know, organized and visually organized by using color and Post-its. When we're going through our work, if we just have, you know, bland paper and pencil, it is not as effective. It's, you know, research that's been done on learning, it honestly has to do with, you know, optimizing the visual parts of your brain, keeping them active so that you can engage in the material. We really want to impart those kinds of messages to them, that we want to help them stay organized in a visual way. And these are some small things. One is just to visually represent that desk at the top right, just to keep a clean slate, try to keep things very bland, like at the desk level of not too much clutter. Always want to keep that. And then, I don't mean to joke, but this top left one is honestly something that they are getting when they work in corrals, when they're taking benchmark assessments. And even some kids, when they're in resource rooms, definitely have corral desks. When they're in the computer lab, they have corrals. Corrals literally are like blinders. They, like horses, right? They keep the blinders on so that they can focus in on what's in front of them. This trifold is a $3 intervention that could be, you know, shipped to you from Amazon. And that little trifold display board could be placed on a desk and keep just their focused in time when they have to do kind of high academic area subjects. And look, I took my GREs in a corral like that. Like even adults need to have their focused attention this way. This is how SATs look when they go to testing centers. It's a intervention that we can pass into the environment at home easily with just a simple trifold. And I already mentioned about having printed schedules. And the other thing, the last thing there is headphones. You know, we put these 504 and IEP recommendations for headphones all the time, and we forget that, no, this would help at home too. If we have headphones on, if they have headphones on, although we may very well want to have headphones on too. But if the kids have their headphones on during a time when they have to lock in their focus, like they have like this big worksheet to get done or a writing assignment, something where they need more attention, it gives a subtle message of, okay, you're locking in now and you're getting into the task. It helps them to drown out, especially when you have multiple siblings in the house. Headphones can be very effective with helping to keep people in their own environment, even though they're in a multiple person environment at the same time. So I don't want us to forget to do that. And we may forget that because we think of those recommendations for school, but we don't think about translating them to the home. And to deal with our new reality of being on the computer all the time, the older that a kid is, or maybe even not the older the kid is, but kids in general really do need distraction blocking. So they need to have something put the rails on for them. So I know, you know, my kid, all the kids that I'm working with, they go off into websites because they get, you know, they have a thought, they look something up, and then it gets to 10 other websites, and then an hour is passed. So you can use some of these distraction blocking website blockers. Cold turkey is a really good one. And I'll talk about one other that's good too. And then there's an iPhone one that's called Stay on Task, which does the same thing, that can block out specific sites like YouTube and block specific apps like TikTok, which happens to be very big for kids. But for young kids, really just blocking out things like YouTube could be very helpful. And for distractions, there's this recommendation that I give to all of my therapy clients, the Revive Watch. I love this watch. It is so helpful because it is, it looks just like a, what do you call it? Like a Fitbit. And what it does is it gently vibrates and gives you this reminder to stay on task. So you set it to go off at certain intervals, and it'll beep and it'll basically say, are you on task right now? And you click it to say yes or no. Tons of research behind this watch has been done, and it's extremely helpful. It's a simulation of what a teacher would be doing by coming and tapping them on the shoulder and saying, okay, Johnny, are you paying attention? And it really does capture helping them to learn to monitor and keep themselves with their work. So that's something for you to look up. This other app, which is also a desktop version, is called Stay Focused. And that's just an explanation of what it looks like when you're trying to select what you want to block. So there's this nuclear option where you can block everything from all websites, or you can block just certain websites. So I just wanted you to see what it could look like when you're trying to get into the options that are available to you. Some of the very specific things I want to talk about are that we really want to think about how to use accommodations to help organize them at home. So what are you learning about your kid? How do they interact with materials best? That's what we want to think about. Do you see them impulsively touching the screen all the time? Know that the novelty does wear off because they have to build up some tolerance to the novelty. But if they are really getting distracted, you really might need to use those website blockers. You might need to put them off the computer. I know in my district, and also I'm working with, I think, 3 or 4 different districts represented by my therapy clients. And they all really have a combination of options where you can choose to do the work, print it out, pencil and paper, and then take a picture and upload it, or go directly onto the screen. Some kids, especially if you have a child with ADHD, they're going to have a more difficult time with interacting with a touch screen to do the worksheets that way. So you might need to consider just doing paper and pencil. And when you see that there might be kids, I have a group of kids that tend to just, again, out of impulsivity, like wanting to ask questions to the parents all day. While we're working, trying to get all these things done, it may not be feasible to allow that to happen. So some restrictions that have helped give guidelines to kids is when I have asked my therapy clients to do this, it has worked. You say that the parent can check in with them at the end of each subject or at the end of each hour. This way, the kids that are a bit older, especially, they are getting a chance to independently kind of trust themselves and build some confidence that they can get through the worksheet to the best of their ability first, before they kind of have this give up style where they say, I don't know what this means. I don't know what that means. So it can help build and again, build their executive functioning skills, build the confidence that they do need to be able to kind of like have this stick-to-itiveness ability that we want to foster in them. So we want to try to have the check-ins not be as needed all day long, but as kids are a little bit older, when they're, maybe 10 and older, your kid best. Try to have them be checking in, but first do the best that you can on the first part of it first. This way they're getting a chance to work on it. And the other thing that we just really need to consider is that our kids don't just, automatically have no problems now that they're home, right? They still have sensory issues. They still have attention and emotional needs. They very well may need private services, tutoring. It might not seem like it's logical or intuitive that it would work, but I am seeing and hearing about, we were talking about it yesterday, we're seeing speech and language therapists be able to do tutoring sessions very effectively. We're seeing, I've seen OT consults be able to be done over teletherapy. I'm doing executive functioning coaching. I see people with their reading tutors sharing screens and being able to really effectively get through a lot of their learning so that they're staying on target. And then I want us to also think about how we can look at kids as collaborators. They might be right about what they need. And then this part is that we want to listen to science. We know how children actually learn best. We know that there's this thing called primacy and recency effect. Kids remember what they first learn and they last learn. So for example, a spelling list. If you have a list that's short, there's more beginnings and ends, right? So you want to have short blocks of assignments because they're going to remember the beginning and the end. It's sort of like interval training with exercise, short bursts. That is very key to kids learning and remembering most. And related to that, we have this Pomodoro technique that's really effective, and it's been, for many, many years, where we know that if kids work in 25-minute blocks of time and then have a 5-minute break, that's the most effective strategy to get them going back and forth in and out of their work with enough break and enough sustained attention that they can handle 25 minutes. Because in the end, our goal after all of this distance learning is done is we want to prevent regression, right? We might not have this lofty goal of new learning for this remainder part of this year, but we want to prevent regression. If we can at least do that, we can do that by using our selves as their support. What we learned from one of the most famous psychologists is that we, just like teachers, parents and teachers, are scaffolding for kids. So what we're doing is we know what they can do with help and what they can do on their own. That's what we're actually learning as parents right now at home. It's incredibly frustrating, but we're learning what those limits are of what they can do independently and what they actually need some scaffolding or assistance and support to be able to do. So we know that the most effective learning is if we can be there to provide the scaffolding to bring them to the next level. So they go right to the level of what they're capable of doing alone. So for example, that worksheet I talked about, where they go through as much of it as they can, and then they bring it to the parent and they say, I'm kind of done. I don't know what to do next. And you are the scaffolding to say, okay, let's think about how this last question still could be done. This is a technique you could try. And then you bring them to the next level, kind of like a staircase up to the next level. So that's what research tells us, that when we provide scaffolding, children do better. And what we know absolutely is that we need to support mental health first so that we can help them be available for learning. If they're in a fight, flight, or freeze state, they can't learn when they're hijacked by emotion. So we use things like co-regulation, which means helping them to be able to soothe themselves and sitting and actually trying to help them regain their composure before going back into a learning phase, right? And I'm going to show you what that means in a second. And what we're doing is teaching and modeling emotional vocabulary. We can be helpful to them by helping them stay organized all day long by narrating what we're doing and how we're doing it, why we're doing it, and talking about, well, that was frustrating and that was hard, but then I felt better when I got to this part. It's helping them to learn that, you know, it's okay that we're experiencing these emotions as we go through this process together. This is just a sample to show you how to find the Pomodoro technique online. It's a free website where you can set the timers to go off every 25 minutes and remind your child to have the 5-minute break. So Tomato Timer has that. And this is just to show you what co-regulation means. Our kids are going to be having meltdowns periodically all the time. And when they're not, we are. So we really need to learn this this big concept of co-regulation. We need to help regulate them, and the two of you as a team, or 3 of you as parents and a child. So when they're upset and when they feel like they're frustrated and can't get something done, we want to just first say to them, let's breathe together, let's sit and just sit down and try to kind of regain our composure. And then we start to ask them questions about how they're feeling. You only get to reasoning after you've been able to regulate yourself. And so I added some recommendations for how to talk about emotions, because I'm just looking at the time, by the way. I added some recommendations about how you can talk to kids and have shorthand speak for what different emotions are by the age group we're talking about in elementary school. Really helpful to use the zones of regulation. I print this out and had it on the fridge for many years. And I use this with my therapy clients all the time so that they can shorthand say, I'm in the blue zone right now. They don't have to explain, I'm sad because this happened or that happened, but they say I'm in the blue zone. And there are so many different apps and things that I wanted to tell you, some ones that are vetted by me that I really recommend to most people that are very helpful for helping with mindfulness, promoting sleep and calmness. These are all, you know, well-vetted apps. You can use Biofeedback, which is a way to help. For example, during co-regulation, you can sit and use one of these apps together with your child. The Well-Tori and Stress Guide uses the iPhone to check your pulse and be able to give you feedback about your stress level. It guides you through effective breathing, calmness, and then gives you feedback about how you restored yourself to calm with your stress scores. Very, very effective. Calm is the #1 technique, app that I always recommend to people. And then this last part is just please focus on your needs as well. think about how you work best, morning, afternoon, whatever. When are you most available and attentive and able to be there for your kid? And are we being flexible? School used to be 9 to 3, but it does not need to be. They probably had about 3 or 4 hours of actual academic learning. And so we don't need to expect that we are going to be doing academic decathlons from 9 to 3 all day long. They need lots of breaks. Think about if you're working from home, maybe do your schoolwork with your child after your peak business hours. And then make sure that you're always taking advantage of like low supervision need tasks where you don't really need to be supervising in a strong way, because they could be doing their their movement breaks. They could be doing math games or a Zoom call with a friend. While you're off doing your work, they could be doing that. And this is just a summary to say, this is what we would want you to be able to focus on. And I just wanted to also show you that these are some resources at the end here for you to be able to use. And probably this last point that I did not mention of all of these that I think we all went through. Know when to get help from teachers and other professionals is something I probably didn't emphasize enough. I know it was several weeks before I even reached out to my daughter's teacher, because I was like, okay, they're overwhelmed. But now I'm like, you know what? I'm calling them. I am like emailing them. I am like remembering that I'm not here alone. I am part of a team. My daughter has an IEP. Our kids probably almost all have IEPs or 504s. We are part of a PPT team, right? We have other people that we can reach out to for different parts of this. And we have to know that in the end, this is a period of time where they have this huge opportunity to be learning these life skills from us. And I truly believe that they're going to end up in a really great place at the end of all of this. I think that there's strategies that we can use and rely on, and just think about, how can we bolster and support and scaffold them? In the end, they are going to be really wonderful. And this is like, we're all like on Little House on the Prairie right now, like, in a one-room schoolhouse, and everybody is here and we're taking on all of this. But in the end, honestly, they're going to remember, what did you do during the coronavirus outbreak? And they're going to remember that we had these times that we got to have special time with our parents that we never had before, and that we got to learn in a different way. And I think that those are all things that we can actually be encouraged by, that there's going to be some positivity that comes out here. So, Janine, you're still there. I thought you were leaving.
Oh. So if anybody has questions for Dr. Murphy, please type them into the Q&A and we will read them off and check them off. And also know that the slides that she has will be on our website, spednetwilton.org. So
thank you guys so much for everything.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we'll see what we...
Great.
Is someone unmuted?
I'm having them type in their questions. Oh, there's something coming up right now. Oh, thank you for having it. You're welcome. We all need it.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you. Glad you were able to be here. Okay. So I feel like I was talking at like super warp speed. Was it okay?
Oh, it was great.
No, it was great.
Oh, it was perfect.
This is that awkward Zoom time.
Yeah.
Where we're kind of waiting. Here we go. There's more.
Okay.
Oh, there's a chat. Oh. Oh, here's another question. Oh, perfectly paced. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we did try to keep it in a much shorter time than we would normally do, because we realize people have crazy schedules.
Yeah, I have literally never talked about this topic in such a condensed way ever. You know,
Yeah.
it's
Right.
very difficult to do this.
We got another thank you. Very nice. I'm glad people are enjoying it or really had some good takeaways from it. I know I did.
I think there are 6 chats. What is that?
Oh, would we
Oh.
significantly alter this for any teenage student? Yes, absolutely. We actually were talking about having to modify this for teenagers and try to launch that next week. Because they are very much a different animal when you think about their maturity, you know, and the fact that they're expected to do so much more independently. And there's different organizational tools and spreadsheets and templates that I actually could share that students are using who are high school age, because they're able to do more independent work, and the recommendations actually are a bit different. But all of the stuff about regulation and you know, how to support their emotional health, like their emotional internal environment, is also the same. Like, so I think it's this, but plus more advanced organization that they're doing for themselves rather than just following a schedule and having it printed, because that's more parents doing it, you know, and giving it to the child when it's this age. But the high schooler is working on much more organization, like even learning more advanced skills they usually have to work on with college kids because they're doing distance learning all the time. But how to email professors, so the high school kids have to know how to email their teachers, how to be respectful, how to ask for your, you know, be assertive with your needs. There's a lot of things that are quite a bit different for the high schoolers.
I see there's some that are typing into the chat. Please, if you have a specific question, type it into the Q&A because the chat, it disappears. Oh, here's the question. Are there too many breaks to give? My son seems to take a lot of breaks and they seem to throw him off, but I think he needs them at the same time.
Honestly, yeah, I think that it's hard. So breaks, I learned this from working with OT specialists, that breaks can be dysregulating to an extent, because if they're not capped off at the end with a soothing activity, it doesn't help them come back to learning. They're running around wild and they don't get a chance to kind of, you know, we used to think just, oh, let them run it out. But honestly, it pumps them up too much and then they can't really get back to focus. So it's when you do the breaks, doing, you know, making the end of a break activity be a soothing activity where they're not just running right up until the last moment that they come to sit down at the desk. So those are some things that we probably could put some recommendations for, like, for example, The Out of Sync Child is a great book for that. The Out of Sync Child Has Fun, I think it's called, is the one that has the activities in it. And they talk about capping sessions or sensory breaks with something that's soothing. And they give specific examples of how those exercises are, or what those exercises are. So yeah, you can't have too many breaks, but it's important what you do with them.
Mary, do you see there's one question, or should I read it?
The metacognitive one?
Yeah.
Okay, so metacognitive skills is teaching them about thinking, thinking about your thinking, like being able to reflect on what you did. So, you know, when you ask kids, why did you do that? That's our number one question we ask kids, right? When they do something. Very often they say, I don't know. And so metacognitive skills is helping to bridge that and help them kind of connect the dots about why they did what they did or what they were thinking when they did something. And so I didn't emphasize it enough, but when I was saying that you should narrate, you should actually talk through and let them see how you talk through and think through problems, that helps develop their metacognitive skills. And the question was, when can you do that? And you can do that literally. I would do that from like, not birth, but like from the very beginning of life, because the more you get to, narrate for them, they start to internalize our speech and they start to do it themselves. So metacognitive skills is more like for abstract thinker kids that are over age 8, but I would do it right from the beginning. Always try to kind of, narrate for them why you're doing and how you were thinking about something as you did it. So like when I came here and I said, for example, I lost Seesaw, like this platform I couldn't get into for my daughter this morning. I was like, what happened to it? It disappeared. And I didn't know the web address. I had no idea how to get back in. I purposely stopped and said what I was thinking out loud because I was narrating for her, who's only 7, how to think through the problem I was having. And that's what metacognitive is. How do you think through problems, really, challenges?
So just in case anybody wants to review all the materials that Dr. Murphy went over today, we're going to post all the slides on our website, and we'll also be posting the webinar on our website and also our Facebook page, just in case you want to, review, go back and take some of these tips and really implement them in your house. Also, Dr. Murphy suggested movement breaks, which is really important. And on May 11th, we'll have Dr. Doug DeMassa coming back for a video to talk about that as well. So
great. Very good.
This was great, Dr. Murphy. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
So I think if just a matter of time for everybody, if there's no more questions, I'm going to turn off the recording and
Just thank you.
okay.
Welcome, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you everyone for coming.
All right, great. Thank you everybody for attending, and we will hopefully see you all soon in the virtual web. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Murphy.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.